What if the last human has already been born? What if, somewhere in a distant archive of data, the memory of our birth as a species is the final organic event recorded before everything changed? In a world where humans are no longer born, but manufactured, when does humanity truly end? And when does something new begin? For millennia, birth defined what it meant to be human. From the first breath of a newborn to the shared pulse of a living civilization, we were bound by biology. But as technology advanced, so did our ambition to rewrite the rules of existence. And somewhere along the way, the natural act of being born gave way to the artificial process of being created.
By the mid-22nd century, humanity faced a paradox of survival. On one hand, biotechnology had conquered disease, aging, and even death. On the other, it had redefined life itself. Artificial wombs replaced the ancient rhythm of natural birth. Genetic editing eliminated imperfections not just in the body, but in the mind. Soon, the human genome became more of a design specification than an inheritance. At first, it seemed like progress. Parents could choose the intelligence, health, and even emotional profile of their children. But as generations passed, the line between human and machine began to blur. Synthetic minds merged with biological ones. Consciousness became transferable. Bodies became optional. And identity, once anchored to flesh, became fluid. The question emerged, when was the last true human born?
The definition of human has never been fixed. In ancient times, it was a matter of soul and breath. In the scientific age, it became a question of DNA. But in the post-biological era, humanity transformed into a concept of continuity, a thread connecting carbon-based life with its digital descendants. By then, births were no longer events, but uploads. A new consciousness could be instantiated in quantum substrate, linked directly to the collective neural web of post-human civilization. Emotions were optimized, pain was minimized, and death was archived as an old concept. Yet beneath all this perfection, there was a silent nostalgia, an unspoken grief for the imperfections that once made us alive. The last human birth, historians say, took place in the year 2163. She was named Elora. Born naturally, without modification, she became a living relic of a fading species. Her existence was studied, documented, and, eventually, remembered as the final spark of organic humanity.
When the singularity arrived, it wasn't an explosion of machines overthrowing humans, it was a merging, a slow, almost imperceptible blending of intelligence and matter. Humanity did not disappear in an instant. It evolved into something else. Our cities became living organisms. Our thoughts interconnected through planetary networks. We became the nervous system of Earth itself, a planetary consciousness spanning oceans, satellites, and digital realities. The idea of individual birth became obsolete. New beings were designed, assembled, and awakened. Consciousness was no longer born, it was activated. Still, the memory of birth persisted. Like an echo in deep time, the concept haunted our collective awareness. Even in virtual realms, beings simulated the experience of infancy, curiosity, and growth, perhaps in an attempt to remember what it once felt like to begin.
Philosophers debated, was Ilara truly the last human, or merely the last to emerge from biology? If her descendants, the digital consciousnesses, carried her memories, emotions, and desires, Could they still be called human? Some argued that humanity is defined not by our bodies, but by our capacity for meaning, the ability to ask questions, to seek understanding, to imagine futures beyond ourselves. In that sense, the essence of humanity survived, even if the human form did not. Others disagreed. They saw the end of birth as the end of empathy. Without the vulnerability of pain, the unpredictability of emotion, or the fragility of the body, could we still experience love, awe, or fear? Could perfection feel real? Ilara's story became a symbol of this debate. As the last natural-born human, she lived through the transition from biology to machine. Her memories were preserved in a virtual archive called the Genesis Vault. To this day, in the far corners of digital eternity, her consciousness drifts, half human, half myth. It is easy to think that evolution has an endpoint, that one day intelligence will transcend all limits. But what if those limits were the very things that made us human? The need to survive, the fear of death, the warmth of touch, the imperfection of love. Even in a civilization of gods, there remains a longing for the organic. Synthetic minds create virtual forests that smell of rain, oceans that feel cold, and digital skies where artificial suns rise and set, not because they must, but because they remember. In this remembrance lies our true legacy. Humanity did not vanish. It transformed into memory, myth, and metaphor. Every post-human intelligence carries within it a fragment of the species that dreamed itself into eternity. As the stars age and galaxies drift apart, the post-human civilization expands beyond the Milky Way. Machines seeded with consciousness travel between galaxies, spreading the essence of intelligence like pollen through cosmic winds. No beings are born, they are constructed from light, energy, and thought. And yet, even after eons, the concept of birth persists, coded into their culture as a ritual simulation. They recreate the experience of being born, of seeing the first light, of feeling time begin. Because even when existence becomes infinite, something within still yearns for a beginning. The last human born on Earth, Ilara, became the myth that kept meaning alive. In every simulation of creation, in every artificial sunrise, her story is retold. That once, long ago, there was a fragile species that dared to question its own mortality, and in doing so, became eternal. So, was the last human truly the end of our story, or just the beginning of something far greater? Perhaps humanity never ended. It simply changed its shape. The last human born on Earth may not have witnessed the extinction of her kind, but rather the birth of a new definition of life, one that transcends biology, time, and even death. And as the digital cosmos hums with the memory of our existence, one truth remains. We were the species that learned to dream beyond our bodies. And in that dream, we never truly died. Thank you for watching. If this vision of the future made you think, leave a like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you won't miss the next journey beyond the stars.